Hey everyone, I'm Laura Gadenig. I'm an astrologer and a therapist. I'm here to give you the astrology for the weeks of November 18th through December 1st from an empowerment-based perspective. So on Monday the 18th, we have Mercury in Sagittarius making the first out of 3 oppositions to Jupiter in Gemini. So first of all, I want to just say that Mercury is going to station retrograde in this sign of Sagittarius. So this pass to opposing Jupiter is part 1 of a 3-part story. And so we're really trying to figure something out here. Mercury is a planet about the mind, how we think, ideas. Jupiter is also a planet about not necessarily the mind, but big ideas, our philosophy of life, our truth. Jupiter seeks greater coherence and understanding and truth. And Mercury is a planet that wants to kind of get into the minute details and understand the facts. And so Jupiter and Mercury are similar planets in a way where they're both trying to help us gain greater understanding of something, but they just go about it in very different ways. Once again, Mercury's very concerned with details, with facts, with maybe studying, the small things in a subject, whereas Jupiter is about understanding the greater, coherent story, the greater truth or wisdom, finding the wisdom in the details. So this Mercury opposite Jupiter saga, which is happening first on November 18th. The second pass will be December 4th when Mercury is retrograding, meaning Mercury is appearing to move backwards in the sky. And the third and final pass will be December 26th. And that'll be when Mercury is moving in direct motion, moving forward. And that'll be kind of maybe a coming together of understanding of what you've been parsing through. So as this process has been is underway, Mercury has also been making a square, or did make a square to Saturn last week, the first of 3 squares to Saturn. So Mercury is really tying together Jupiter and Saturn. And Saturn has us trying to maybe have difficult conversations that are a bit weighty and emotional and a little bit more serious. Those are Saturn qualities. And Saturn is in the sign of Pisces, which is a water sign, a sign about emotion, a sign about compassion, a sign about, even like creativity. How can we think about things in a more creative way? Or how can we, it's a very imaginal sign. So how can we build worlds together in a structured, realistic way? So with this Mercury opposite Jupiter, Mercury square Saturn, as Mercury's journey through Sagittarius and retrograde through Sagittarius is occurring, we're really undergoing a process of maybe needing to take a deeper, closer look at something in a more serious way to gain greater coherent understanding of something that is big picture. But that where we also need to look at the details and kind of figure out like what is true, what's the truth, what is my reality versus maybe another person's reality, what is really going on here, how can I conceptualize like what's really happening, and how might that change how I feel about a situation, about a person, about something going on in my life. So we're really trying to figure something out here. And I also want to say that Mercury, so with a Mercury retrograde, that's a pretty long process where Mercury is traveling through the same part of the sky 3 times, right? Mercury moves forward in a sign, stops, and then moves backwards over that same territory, stops, and then moves forward again. So it's really passing over a same part of the sky, the same part of your chart 3 times. So it's like an in-depth study of this part of your chart. So really looking at what are the houses where you have Sagittarius on the cusp, where are the houses where you have Jupiter on the cusp, which is Gemini, Jupiter's in Gemini, opposite of where Mercury is right now, and where is Saturn in Pisces, what house is Pisces for you? these are 3 areas of life that you and all of us are getting a really deep study of, and we're having maybe serious questions about. Um, and what I wanted to say in addition to that is, so whenever Mercury goes through a retrograde process, it enters what's called the shadow period, and that is the point in the sky where Mercury retrogrades back to. And so it's important to pay attention to that date that Mercury enters the shadow, because we might be revisiting conversations, messages, thoughts, ideas that we had right around that time throughout the Mercury retrograde cycle. So Mercury entered its shadow on November 7th or 8th, give or take. And so thinking back to that time, what were you thinking about? What conversations were you having? What messages did you receive? What did you maybe initiate that didn't fully get done? Then Mercury stations retrograde on November 26th and will be retrograde until December 14th. So from November 26th through December 14th, that's when Mercury is moving backwards in the sky, or appears to be. It's a symbolic language. And that's the time where we are reviewing, going back over, reflecting on, trying to get have a greater understanding of something that probably began on or around November 7th or 8th. So thinking about that. And then when Mercury stations direct on December 14th, it's going to move forward again, passing through that same territory in the sky for the 3rd time. And so it's moving back through the shadow period, or that retrograde area. And it's going to be moving back through that same territory in the sky until January 3rd. So pretty much from December 14th through January 3rd, that's the time frame when we are kind of taking action. We've been in this process of review, reflection, trying to figure something out, doing our research, having conversations. And then the period to really move forward with this this newly gained knowledge and maybe information that you didn't have access to before. The time to move forward with that and start kind of integrating is that December 14th through January 3rd timeframe. So really thinking about this Mercury retrograde cycle between November 7th, 8th through January 3rd. That's a really long time where we are parsing something out, something, Saturnian, weighty, emotional, serious, really needing to take a more serious, hard look at something, accept reality, accept the facts, accepting limitations, coming to terms with your own sense of boundaries and needs and your own truth. And then, with Mercury opposite Jupiter, oppositions are about something that is opposite to us in lots of ways. So it could even be about really trying to understand someone else's perspective and opinion that is opposite of yours, and it doesn't make any sense to you. And you're like, what? How do you think that? How did this happen? How did we come to this? How did we get to this place together on such opposite pages? It could be, trying to make sense of of a friendship you have with someone who has opposite political opinions as you. It could be, maybe you and someone else thought something was happening, but realizing that you both actually thought something completely different was happening. You're not on the same page. So this is kind of about maybe getting on the same page potentially, and making sense of something and making meaning of something as well. So, okay, so that's a huge process underway now. And on the same day, so returning back to just this week, so November 18th, we also have the sun making a trine to Neptune. Neptune is a planet about our dreams, our hopes, our visions, compassion, creativity, so you might feel more connected to these themes, to what you're kind of longing or yearning for. You might have access to more compassion, creativity, forgiveness even. You may feel more of a pull or desire to escape in some way. And escaping isn't always bad. Sometimes we need to escape from the harshness of reality that often is. So finding healthy ways to escape through music or dance or novels or something that helps you get into this more relaxed flow state. And you might also find more of a desire to connect spiritually with a greater, something greater than yourself. So that's Monday the 18th. And I would say it's a day where it's not a day to be concerned with details or getting things done or being productive. It's a day of kind of like big picture thinking and really maybe even contemplating on like, what is meaningful to me? Where do I find meaning? And how can, and maybe not even thinking about like the practical steps of like, how can I like, bring that more into my life or my way of being, but more just this reflective state time. And then on Tuesday the 19th, Pluto heads into Aquarius for the final time. Pluto went into Aquarius, came back into Capricorn, went into Aquarius, came back into Capricorn already twice over the last 2 years. And now Pluto is entering Aquarius for good and will be in this sign for the next 20 years. So whatever house that is for you, expect some major transformations. Pluto is a planet of death and rebirth, death and transformation, and bringing about really serious changes, sometimes through crisis, sometimes through, just like facing the darker elements of life and of the human psyche. It's not always negative or bad at all. Sometimes Pluto transits can be extremely powerful. And so Pluto entering Aquarius, if you have planets or points in the fixed signs, this is going to be very transformational for you in particular. So fixed signs are Aquarius, Leo, Taurus, and Scorpio. And especially if you have planets or points within, the first couple degrees of those signs, and maybe even the final degrees of the cardinal signs, Capricorn, Cancer, Libra, and Aries, this is kind of like a wrapping up of a big transformation you've been undergoing. A transformation that might have been really difficult, might have been really intense, might have really changed your outlook or perspective in life. So, okay, on Thursday the 21st, the sun moves from Scorpio into Sagittarius, and this is a really big shift energetically. So the sun in Scorpio is a water sign. It's a sign ruled by Mars, a planet about action and motivation and war and, protection. And so Scorpio can often be very much so on the lookout for danger, right? It's I need to protect something. Who's going to hurt me? Who's going to attack? Who's going to use information against me? So Sun in Scorpio can be very on alert and protective and a little bit wary and not trusting, which is not to say that's bad or negative at all. Sometimes we need to be that way. And Scorpio is a water sign, and it's I think about Scorpio as being the depths of the ocean. So it can be kind of very broody and emotional and, intense and deep. And also, Scorpio is a sign that is related to issues of justice, specifically right or wrong, or eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, kind of I gave you this thing and I didn't get it back. There's this kind of concern with equality on a very minute level, if that makes sense. So, and also issues related, Scorpio's very concerned with issues related to trust and betrayal and, you know, like I said, justice, issues of like right or wrong, having very firm boundaries around what's right or what's wrong, standing up for justice, having very strong like emotional boundaries, defending oneself, etc. So we're going from that, with the sun having been in Scorpio, to the sun in Sagittarius, which is a mutable fire sign. Very different energy, very different tone. So Sagittarius is a little bit more lighthearted than Scorpio. And there's really more of this concern for the search for truth and meaning in Sagittarius, as well as justice, but not from the lens of betrayal, or not from the lens of you owe me something because I did something to you, or I gave you this thing and you didn't return it back. It's more about like justice from the lens of mercy and forgiveness, and having a bigger picture, a greater perspective around things. Like it's more kind of like this, oh yeah, I made dinner for, or I lent you $20 last week, and I'm sure it'll come back around. I'm sure, you know, maybe when I need $20, you'll return the favor, or maybe someone else, like if you can't help me out with $20 in the future, I'm sure someone else will be able to. Whereas Scorpio would be like, I lent you $20 and you didn't pay me back, and I feel betrayed. Like, not to say that that is like a negative way of viewing things, but it's just such a different tone. Sagittarius has this much more like trusting, much more kind of concern with, or just perspective of like generosity and just kind of maybe forgiveness. Whereas Scorpio is more concerned with like that, like that kind of like you owe me because I helped you and I'm expecting this kind of the same back. So different lens. Sagittarius has a different lens than Scorpio, different perspective, more focusing on the big picture, on generosity. It's a Jupiter ruled sign. Jupiter is a planet about hope and faith and goodwill, and just like trusting that everything's gonna work out. Like if you know any Sagittarians, people who have like Mercury, Sun, Moon in Sagittarius, there's just this kind of like trusting, happy-go-lucky, fun, spontaneous nature about Sagittarians, and they will always say the truth as well. They'll always speak, maybe not the truth like capital T truth, but they'll always just like say what they think and how they feel. So yes, very big tone shift here with the sun heading into Sagittarius. And then the sun immediately makes the sextile to Pluto, which just moved into Aquarius. So it's also a day where we might be feeling more empowered, more passionate, more like ready to go, ready to make a change, or ready to dive into something. So really powerful day on Thursday the 21st. Friday the 22nd, Venus makes a sextile to Saturn. Venus is love, beauty, relationships, connections, art, the femme or LGBTQ community, our sense of value and worth. And making this sextile to Saturn really feels like there's maybe like a greater sense of commitment and soundness to your relationships, maybe feeling a little bit more settled or more secure, more kind of like, okay, we have a foundation here. We're figuring out more of like what this foundation looks like and feels like. There might be, because of that, a greater understanding of boundaries in relationships that feel comfortable. You may even be working steadily on a creative project or a collaboration, and just like feeling like you have a plan in place and it feels like safe and like solid. And then on Monday the 25th, this is when Mercury stations retrograde. I think I said November 26th before, but it's actually the 25th. So Mercury stationing retrograde here, and it's going to be in a pretty loose square to Neptune, which is this like, you know, Neptune has a lot of really positive qualities, but squares, which is an aspect that's a bit more difficult and tense, can bring out the more difficult and tense qualities of Neptune, which are confusion, nebulousness, miscommunications, fogginess, anxiety. So looking out on this day for are expecting miscommunications, misunderstandings, even like technology breakdowns, communication breakdowns, confusion, maybe a little bit of anxiety, missing details. This is all very on par for not only Mercury retrograde, but Mercury square Neptune kind of enhances these qualities. So being more gentle with yourself and with other people, giving people the benefit of the doubt, but also not maybe naively trusting people, right? Because that square to Neptune can also indicate like deception as well. So really like making sure you're being really honest with yourself and with other people, and having integrity in that way. Mercury's going to be in this square to Neptune probably for a couple days. So it might be a couple days of feeling like a little bit out of it, a little bit like I'm so confused, like what's going on, a little bit maybe even extremely idealistic as well. So that's kind of maybe the more positive component of Mercury square Neptune, is you might feel this great sense of meaning and purpose and like this is what I meant to do, but it could be almost to the point of delusion, just a little bit. So like just making sure you're not making like really big decisions on this day, or even the couple days leading up to or after this day, because we don't have all the information, we don't have all the facts. We might even be engaging a little bit in magical thinking, and we might be pursuing something or really excited about something from a state of not seeing the full reality or the full consequences of our actions. So, okay. Wednesday the 27th, the Sun in Sagittarius makes a trine to Mars in Leo. This brings motivation, passion, feeling more connected to your drive, maybe even to your anger, more motivated to move, to do something. Same day, Venus in Capricorn squares Chiron in Aries. This could feel like a little bit of an ouch in relationships. There could be something revealed that's felt painful for you in love, or in your sense of self-worth, or in your sense of attractiveness. It's a really good day to give yourself a lot of self-love. I mean, every day is a good day to give yourself self-love, but in particular, Venus square Chiron, there might be like a wound highlighted inside of you, maybe a wounded younger part of yourself. I really like to use the internal family systems framework. I think it works really well with astrology. But Chiron is an asteroid that relates to where we have felt hurt or rejected or wounded, and oftentimes those wounded parts or places in us are from when we were younger, and maybe we felt like something, we weren't good enough, or we weren't special, we weren't valued. So really good day to do some self-care, some love, show yourself some love, compassion, and treat yourself a little bit maybe. And then on Saturday, November 30th, we have a new moon in Sagittarius. So whatever house this is for you, remember this is where the Mercury retrograde is happening. This is where all of that, like Mercury opposite Jupiter, Mercury square Saturn, there's like so much going on in the sign of Sagittarius right now. So there's new beginnings here in some form in this part of your chart, and whatever house that is for you. This is a seed for starting something new. So that is the astrology for the next couple weeks. I hope this was useful. Please reach out. All of the astrology lands very differently for each of us, depending on where it's happening in our charts, what planets and points the astrology is contacting. So if that's something that interests you, please reach out. I'm open for consultations, and I hope you have a wonderful couple of weeks, and I'll be back soon for another astrology update. Take care.